It was a calm afternoon, one of those ordinary days when everything seemed quiet and unremarkable. People were moving about, chatting and laughing softly in the park. The sun was warm but not too bright, and a gentle breeze moved the leaves in the trees. She was sitting on a worn-out wooden bench near the edge of the park, quietly watching the world go by. She did not want attention. She never did. In her hands, she held a small violin case, worn at the edges, carrying years of stories within it. It had been with her through so much, yet she had always kept it close to herself, almost like a secret. Some children ran past, giggling, while a couple of friends tossed a frisbee nearby. People were busy with their own lives, not noticing her sitting quietly. She watched everything with a soft smile, content to be just another face in the crowd. She did not seek to stand out, nor did she care for recognition. The violin in her hand was her companion, not a tool to impress anyone. She remembered the countless times she had played alone. In her room, in her tiny apartment, or on the quiet streets where no one paid attention. Those were her moments of escape, her way of speaking without words, her way of expressing emotions too deep for conversation. Today, however, was different, though she did not know it yet. A small group of people had gathered nearby, some of them talking quietly, others watching the children play. They were not expecting anything special to happen. Among them was a woman who noticed her sitting on the bench. With a friendly smile, she approached, curious about the small violin case resting on the woman's lap. She asked softly, almost jokingly, "Would you play for us? Just for fun?" At first, she hesitated. She was not used to performing for strangers, and she had never considered playing in a public place where people might watch and judge. But something in the woman's tone was kind, not demanding, and she felt a strange warmth spread through her chest. She opened the violin case slowly, taking out the instrument with careful hands. Her fingers lingered over the strings as if remembering old friends. She took a deep breath and closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the familiar weight of the violin against her shoulder. The group around her noticed the movement and started to gather, drawn by curiosity more than expectation. Some leaned on the railing, some sat on nearby benches, and others simply paused in their walks. They did not know what to expect. Some of them were skeptical, thinking it might just be a simple, short tune, something playful and light. Others felt a quiet excitement, sensing that perhaps there was more to this than they could see. The air seemed to hold its breath as she positioned the bow on the strings. She began slowly, carefully letting the first notes float into the air. They were soft, almost tentative, but beautiful in their fragility. The sound was gentle, delicate, and full of emotion, as if every note carried a story. People started to notice. Conversations faded, and eyes turned toward her. Even the children slowed their play, captivated by the unexpected music. The violin seemed to speak directly to each person, bypassing words and touching something deeper inside. With every note, she became more confident. The music was not about perfection, nor about showing skill. It was about feeling, about letting the emotions flow freely through the strings and the bow. The first hesitant melody transformed into something richer, more expressive. The group of people around her began to lean in, not wanting to miss a single sound. There was a calmness that settled over them, a sense that something important was happening, even if they could not yet name it. She remembered her past as she played. Memories of lonely nights, moments of sadness, times when the world felt heavy and unforgiving. She had always turned to her violin in those moments, letting it carry her feelings when words could not. And now, even without realizing it, those emotions were reaching out beyond herself, touching the hearts of people she did not know. It was a strange, powerful feeling. To share something so personal and see it reflected in the quiet attention of strangers, a few people had tears in their eyes, though they tried to hide them. Others smiled softly, feeling emotions they could not fully explain. The children, sensing the change in the air, sat down quietly on the grass, listening. Even the wind seemed to pause, letting the music flow uninterrupted. She played not for applause, not for recognition, but simply because it was the right thing to do in that moment. She had no idea how much impact her playing was having as she continued. The music became more expressive, weaving through sorrow and hope, quiet reflection and gentle joy. It was a conversation without words, a story told through the movement of her hands and the resonance of the violin. Each note was carefully placed, yet it was spontaneous, alive with emotion. The people around her began to feel connected, not only to the music, but to each other. Sharing in an experience they had not expected to have that day, she noticed a few older people in the group, their faces softening as memories stirred in their minds. A man with a cane closed his eyes, letting the melody take him somewhere far away. A woman held her hands over her heart, moved by a feeling she could not quite name. Even those who had come with casual curiosity found themselves drawn in, held captive by the simple power of sound. She did not see them at first, lost as she was in her music. But she felt it in the energy that seemed to surround her. Time became fluid. Minutes stretched and contracted, unnoticed by those listening. The ordinary park around them seemed to disappear, leaving only the music and the shared presence of everyone there. She played as she always did, innocently, fully, without trying to impress or perform. Every emotion, every experience she had carried was poured into the notes. It was not a show, it was life itself. It's captured and expressed in the vibration of strings. By the end of the first piece, there was a moment of silence, so deep that it felt almost sacred. The listeners were caught in it, some blinking rapidly to clear tears, others simply holding their breath. No one moved immediately, not wanting to disturb the feeling that had grown so unexpectedly. She lowered her bow slowly, her eyes still closed, letting the final note linger in the air. The sound faded naturally, leaving behind a quiet hum in the minds of everyone present. When she opened her eyes, she saw the faces around her. There were smiles, yes, but also astonishment, gratitude, and something more profound, a recognition of the simple beauty of sharing. No one said anything at first, unsure how to express what they had just felt. The music had bypassed words, had spoken directly to hearts, and left an impression that would linger far longer than the performance itself. One by one, people began to speak, softly at first. Compliments, thanks, quiet expressions of admiration. But the woman with the violin paid little attention to words. She smiled gently, feeling a warmth in her chest that she had not anticipated. This had started as a casual request, a small suggestion to play for fun, yet it had grown into something far more meaningful. She realized that sometimes even the simplest acts could reach farther than expected. She carefully placed the violin back in its case, closing it with a gentle click. Her hands lingered on the worn edges, memories of countless moments spent in solitude flooding back. She looked around at the group, noting the soft expressions on their faces, the way they lingered as if reluctant to leave. Something had shifted, subtly but unmistakably, and she felt a quiet satisfaction that was not about praise, but about connection. People began to drift away slowly, some walking together, some pausing to speak quietly among themselves. The park returned to its ordinary rhythm, but there was a lingering sense that something extraordinary had happened. Even in their everyday routines, the memory of the music would follow them, a gentle reminder of a shared human experience. She remained on the bench for a few moments longer, watching, breathing in the calm after the subtle storm of emotion she had stirred. Eventually, she stood, lifting the violin case once more. There was no rush, no hurry to leave. She walked slowly, savoring the quiet triumph of having shared something deeply personal and seeing it touch others. The park seemed a little different now, brighter in some unseen way, infused with the echoes of the melody. She knew she would return home the same as always, carrying her violin and the comfort it brought her, but she also knew that today had been special in a way that would not be forgotten. And so, what had begun as a simple, casual request to play for fun had become the start of something far more profound. In that ordinary park, on that ordinary afternoon, a violin spoke, hearts listened, and the quiet magic of connection unfolded softly, powerfully, and completely without words. The violin's first notes had already reached their listeners. But now she began to play with more confidence, letting the music flow more freely. Each sound was richer, more expressive, filled with emotions she could not put into words. It was as though the violin had a language of its own, one that spoke directly to hearts. People around her began to stop what they were doing entirely. Conversations ceased, footsteps slowed, and all eyes turned toward the quiet figure on the bench. There was something in the way she played that drew attention without asking for it. A subtle pull that made everyone want to listen closely. She let her bow glide across the strings, producing notes that were soft, tender, and slightly melancholy. The music seemed to reach into invisible corners of the park, settling gently in the hearts of those who heard it. A young man sitting on a nearby bench leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, captivated by the sound. He had not expected to be touched so deeply by something so simple, yet he could not look away. The music seemed to tell a story, one that felt personal even though it was meant for no one in particular. Children who had been playing noisily paused mid-run, their games forgotten. A little girl with braids sat down on the grass, watching her intently while her brother clutched a small toy, eyes wide with quiet amazement. Even though they were too young to understand the deeper meanings of the music, they could feel its magic. The melody was gentle, yet it stirred something inside them that they could not explain. It was as if the violin had opened a secret door to a world of emotion and wonder. An older man stopped nearby. He had been lost in thought, carrying memories that had long been tucked away. Now, with each note, memories rose to the surface. He closed his eyes and let the music wash over him. He felt sadness, yes, but also a sense of comfort he had not felt in years. The violin spoke to him in a language older than words, reminding him of people he had loved, moments he had cherished, and dreams he had once held close. The woman playing the violin was lost in her own world as well. Her eyes were closed and her fingers moved naturally across the strings. Each motion seemed effortless, yet it carried the weight of everything she had felt, everything she had lived through. This was more than a performance. It was a conversation between her and the world, a way to share her experiences without uttering a single word. She felt a quiet joy as the music began to connect with those around her, though she did not fully understand its reach. Some people had tears in their eyes, small drops catching the sunlight as they fell. Others held their hands over their hearts, feeling emotions they had not touched for a long time. A young couple sat together, their hands entwined, listening in silence. Neither spoke. Words would have only disrupted the spell. They were sharing something profound in the simple act of listening, of allowing themselves to be moved. The violin's melody created a connection between strangers, bridging gaps of age, experience, and background in a way that felt almost miraculous. As she continued, the music began to shift subtly. The initial softness gave way to richer tones, weaving through feelings of hope, longing, and quiet reflection. Each note was deliberate, yet natural, a reflection of the woman herself. She did not play for applause or recognition, yet the effect was undeniable. The group around her leaned in instinctively, drawn by something they could not see but could deeply feel. It was as if the violin had become a storyteller, telling tales of love, loss, and endurance without needing a single word. A teenager sitting on a nearby step wiped at his eyes, embarrassed that the music had stirred something inside him he did not fully understand. He glanced at his friends, some of whom were equally affected, and realized that even those who appeared indifferent could not ignore the power of what they were hearing. The woman on the bench did not notice these small reactions individually, but she felt the energy in the air shift, becoming warmer, more alive. She let herself be carried by it, allowing the music to flow even more freely. The park, which had been ordinary and routine moments before, now felt transformed. Birds paused mid-flight, their wings fluttering slowly as though listening. The wind moved the leaves gently, and even the sunlight seemed softer, casting a golden hue over the scene. Everything around her became part of the performance, not intentionally, but naturally, as if the world itself had joined in harmony with the music. People began to recognize that they were not merely observers. They were participants in something larger, something that touched the core of human experience. A mother stood nearby, holding her baby, feeling a sense of calm she had not felt in a long time. She glanced down at her child and noticed the little one's eyes wide and curious, head swaying slightly to the rhythm. The music was not just filling the space. It was filling hearts, soothing invisible wounds, and creating a moment of shared humanity. The mother's mind wandered to memories of her own childhood, of lessons learned and love received. And she felt a quiet gratitude for the unexpected gift of this simple, yet profound performance. The woman on the bench shifted slightly, sensing the subtle energy of connection. She was no longer just playing her violin. She was communicating with the world around her in a way that felt effortless yet deeply meaningful. Each note she played seemed to resonate with someone, even if only for a fleeting moment. People who had never met before exchanged glances, silently acknowledging the shared experience. It was as if the music had created an invisible thread linking them together. She moved through different melodies, shifting from gentle contemplative passages to ones with a bit more energy and life. The music ebbed and flowed like a river, carrying emotion along its current. The listeners responded naturally, some leaning closer, some closing their eyes. Others simply breathing deeply, letting the music fill their senses. There was no judgment, no expectation, only a willingness to feel, to be present, and to connect with the moment. It was a rare kind of beauty, quiet but unmistakable. A few people began to record on their phones, but even then they lowered the devices, realizing that no recording could truly capture the experience. The magic of the moment was in the live connection, in the subtle exchange of emotion between the violinist and her audience. Each person experienced it differently, yet all were touched in some way. Some felt nostalgia, some sadness, some hope, and some pure awe. It was as though the music was a mirror, reflecting whatever each person needed to see within themselves. As the performance continued, the woman allowed herself to remember more of her past, drawing inspiration from the challenges she had faced and the quiet victories she had achieved. The music became a map of her journey, with peaks and valleys representing struggles, triumphs, and moments of quiet reflection. The listeners were unaware of the exact stories behind each note, but they felt their emotional truth. The melody resonated because it was genuine, because it came from a place of honesty and lived experience. The sun began to dip slightly lower in the sky, casting longer shadows across the park. Yet the music held its own, unaffected by time. People remained where they were, rooted in the moment, unwilling to leave the spell the music had created. Even those who had originally come for a brief walk or a casual chat found themselves captivated, drawn into the flow of sound and feeling. It was a rare alignment of circumstances where the ordinary became extraordinary, simply because someone allowed themselves to share their heart. Finally, after what felt like both an eternity and a fleeting moment, she slowed the tempo, letting the last few notes linger in the air. The sound faded gently, like a whisper, leaving behind a quiet stillness. The listeners blinked, as if waking from a dream. They were changed, though subtly, by what they had just experienced. There was a softness in their expressions, a sense of calm, and perhaps a small recognition that life sometimes offered moments of unexpected beauty. The woman lowered her bow and took a small breath, feeling a quiet sense of fulfillment. She did not seek applause, though. When it came, it was warm and sincere. People clapped. Yes, but there was also a deeper acknowledgement, an unspoken understanding that they had witnessed something rare. She smiled faintly, packing her violin away with care. Knowing that she had shared a part of herself that could not be measured or quantified, it was simply felt, and that was enough. As the crowd began to disperse slowly, the energy lingered. Conversations were soft. People walked a little slower. Some spoke in whispers, and some remained in place for a few moments longer, savoring the memory of the music. The park returned to its quiet rhythm, but the experience left an imprint on everyone present. It was a reminder that even the simplest acts, offered with sincerity and heart, could reach beyond expectation, touch souls, and create a shared moment of wonder. She stayed a little longer on the bench, watching the park return to normal. The music had done its work, connecting hearts, soothing minds, and opening doors that had been closed for a long time. She felt the satisfaction of knowing that something real had happened, something that could not be replicated, only remembered. And with that thought, she rose, holding her violin case carefully, ready to leave, knowing that the day had been made extraordinary, not by grand gestures, but by the quiet language of music, shared honestly and fully, touching every heart that had listened, as the violin's melody filled the park. It became more than just a sequence of notes. It was a story unfolding in real time, a reflection of the woman's life that no one else could see fully, but everyone could feel. The people around her remained captivated, sensing a depth in the music they could not entirely understand. Each note carried a subtle weight, a trace of memories and emotions that had shaped the woman into who she was. To the listeners, it seemed as though the violin spoke directly to their hearts, even though they knew nothing about her past. In the quiet corners of her mind, memories surfaced as she played. She remembered nights spent alone, her small apartment illuminated by the dim light of a single lamp, the violin resting against her shoulder as she poured every ounce of feeling into the strings. Music had always been her companion, her refuge, and her voice when words failed. She had endured moments of doubt, times when the world seemed indifferent or harsh. And yet she had never let go of her violin. It had been with her through heartbreak, loss, loneliness, and quiet victories that no one else could see. And now, without even thinking about it, she was sharing those experiences with strangers, allowing them to feel fragments of her life through sound. Each note was a mirror of her journey. The softer passages carried the weight of her struggles, the loneliness she had endured, and the quiet fear that had sometimes paralyzed her. But within those somber tones, there were hints of resilience, moments of courage that had pushed her forward despite everything. The music became a tapestry of emotion, weaving together threads of pain, hope, and quiet determination. Listeners felt it instinctively. They did not know the stories behind the music, yet it resonated with their own lives, awakening emotions they may have kept hidden for years. A man sitting on a nearby bench, who had been walking aimlessly earlier, stopped and closed his eyes as the melody reached him. His own memories surfaced, cheers of challenges, moments of disappointment, and the subtle victories that had kept him going. He felt a strange sense of relief, as though the music was acknowledging his struggles and offering comfort. He was not alone in his experiences. The music reminded him that human emotion was shared, universal, and enduring. He opened his eyes briefly, watching the violinist play, feeling gratitude for the unexpected gift she was giving without even realizing it. The young woman with the little girl and her brother sat quietly, absorbing every note. The girl tilted her head, listening carefully, feeling the shifts in the melody, even if she could not name them. Her brother hugged his toy tightly, moved by the beauty of the sound, sensing the emotions it carried. The music created a space where age did not matter, where past experiences and present feelings converged. It was a rare moment of unity, a shared understanding of something that was difficult to articulate but impossible to ignore. The violinist's fingers moved gracefully, instinctively, yet each gesture carried a purpose. Her bow danced across the strings, producing a language of emotions that had no words but conveyed profound meaning. She remembered a particular time when she had been struggling to find her place in the world. Friends and colleagues had doubted her, sometimes discouraging her gently, sometimes harshly. Yet the violin had always been her refuge, the one thing she could rely on to express herself authentically. Every note she played now carried the weight of that resilience. The culmination of years of silent perseverance. Some listeners were unaware of the exact emotions they were experiencing, yet they felt them all the same. A young couple sitting together held hands tightly, feeling the tenderness and vulnerability expressed in the melody. They did not speak. Words would have diminished the raw emotion flowing through the air. The older man with the cane, who had been quietly listening, felt tears forming in the corners of his eyes, acknowledging moments of his life long buried. He realized that the music was not only about her story, but had somehow woven itself into his own, reflecting his experiences back to him in ways that were gentle yet profound. The woman allowed herself to reflect on the moments of quiet triumph in her life. There were times when she had pushed through self-doubt, when she had practiced late into the night despite exhaustion, when she had faced rejection and found a way to rise again. The music reflected those victories as much as it reflected the pain. There was a balance in the melody, a sense of moving forward even when weighed down by sorrow. Each note was honest, unpretentious, and raw, giving her audience a glimpse into a life lived fully, albeit quietly. The park had transformed under the influence of the music. The ordinary green spaces, the trees swaying in the breeze, the sun casting gentle shadows, all seemed to participate in the performance. People who had entered the park for mundane reasons were now part of an experience that felt almost sacred. Conversations were muted, footsteps slowed, and even the birds seemed to listen, perched quietly in the branches. The world had become a shared space of reflection and emotional connection. Sparked by the presence of one woman and her violin, a mother and her baby continued to feel the soothing power of the melody. She glanced down at her child, who was quietly observing the violinist, sensing the depth of emotion conveyed through sound. The mother felt a release of tension she had carried for days, perhaps weeks. She thought about moments of her own life, the challenges, small victories, the quiet losses, and realized that the music was gently holding space for all of it. It was a reminder that life's moments, no matter how ordinary, could carry extraordinary meaning when experienced fully. The woman's attention remained focused entirely on the violin. She was aware of the people listening, of course, but she was not performing for them in the traditional sense. She was sharing herself, her experiences, and her emotions, allowing them to flow freely through her fingers and into the world. Each note was deliberate, yet organic, born from a life of listening to her own heart and translating that understanding into music. The listeners could not see the years of dedication, the quiet practice, or the moments of self-doubt that had led to this point, but they felt the authenticity. Some people, who had initially been skeptical, were now moved profoundly. A teenager who had come with friends and had been restless now sat quietly, absorbed in the music, feeling something inside that he could not quite name. The sounds of the violin stirred empathy, reflection, and a sense of belonging. The music seemed to bypass thought, reaching directly into emotion, reminding everyone that life was more than routines, schedules, or distractions. It was about feeling, connecting, and acknowledging the layers of human experience. She shifted her melodies subtly,
allowing the music to explore different emotional landscapes.
There were moments of gentle melancholy, reminders of struggles faced, interspersed with brighter, more uplifting passages that spoke of hope and perseverance. Listeners were caught in the ebb and flow, experiencing both the weight of sorrow and the lightness of hope in a single sitting. The violin became a vessel for everything she had carried within her, translating the unseen into sound, the unspoken into a shared emotional experience. The sun continued its slow descent, casting warm golden light over the park. Shadows lengthened, but the music seemed to suspend time, creating a bubble where past and present converged. People lingered, reluctant to leave, feeling that stepping away too soon would break the fragile spell. The woman played as if the music were a bridge, connecting her inner world to those around her, allowing listeners to enter a space of quiet introspection and empathy. Each person experienced it uniquely, yet all were touched in ways that transcended explanation. Memories continued to flow for the violinist as she played. She recalled moments of doubt, when she questioned her abilities or wondered if her music had any value beyond her own comfort. She remembered the encouragement of those who believed in her quietly, who never demanded anything but offered support. Each memory was translated into sound, each emotion into melody, creating a performance that was honest, vulnerable, and deeply human. Her music carried the weight of life itself, and those who listened felt the truth in every note. As the performance drew toward its quieter sections, the music became reflective, almost meditative. People closed their eyes, letting the sounds wash over them, allowing themselves to feel without reservation. The violinist's bow moved slowly and deliberately, each note lingering just a moment longer, as if giving the listener time to absorb its meaning fully. There was no rush, no urgency, only presence, attention, and the quiet, shared experience of emotion made tangible through music. Finally, the last notes of this piece faded gently, leaving a soft resonance in the air. The listener sat in silence for a moment as though waking from a dream. Some blinked rapidly to clear tears, others simply exhaled, feeling lighter than before. The music had given them a gift without asking for anything in return. A reminder that beauty and emotion could be found in simple acts of expression. She lowered her bow, feeling a quiet sense of fulfillment, knowing that even if no words were spoken, something had passed between her and every person who had listened. The woman packed her violin carefully, handling it with the care and respect it deserved. She did not need applause or recognition. The act of sharing herself, of allowing her music to touch lives, was reward enough. The people around her began to stir, slowly returning to their own worlds, carrying with them the memory of an experience that had been rare, beautiful, and deeply human. The park returned to its ordinary rhythm, but the impact of the music lingered quietly in hearts. A reminder that life's quietest moments often hold the greatest power. And so, the violinist, sitting once again in the park, had transformed ordinary moments into something extraordinary. Through her music, she had shared the depth of her struggles, the light of her victories, and the richness of her humanity. She had reminded everyone present that music, the violin's melody, had grown. Reaching deeper into the hearts of everyone present, the woman's playing had evolved beyond the initial tenderness into a powerful, flowing expression of emotion. Every note seemed alive, full of longing, joy, sorrow, and hope, all at once. The park had transformed completely. The ordinary spaces between benches, trees, pathways, now felt filled with invisible threads of connection, linking each listener to her music and to each other. Those who had stopped to watch began to sense the depth and meaning carried in the sound. She played with abandon now, letting the music carry her, guiding her fingers without conscious thought. Her emotions poured out freely, a reflection of years of struggle and resilience. It was not practiced performance. It was a living, breathing conversation between herself, her violin, and everyone who chose to listen. Each note built upon the last, creating a tapestry of feelings that seemed to resonate with the silent hopes and sorrows of the audience. People felt the layers of life within the melody, grief that had been endured, dreams that had been pursued, and quiet strength that had grown through hardship. An older woman leaned on a nearby railing, her eyes glistening with tears. She felt herself drawn back to moments from her own past, the long nights she had endured, the quiet decisions she had made to carry on, and the small victories that no one had ever witnessed. The music reached her in a way words never could, acknowledging her pain, her courage, and her perseverance. It made her feel seen, even though the violinist did not know her and perhaps never would. In that moment, she understood the power of pure expression, and how one person's honesty could ripple through countless hearts. The young children sitting on the grass were captivated. The little girl leaned slightly forward, eyes wide, absorbing the emotion that she could not yet name. Her brother held his toy close, feeling the gentle rise and fall of the music like waves against the shore. Even at such a young age, the children sensed the meaning of vulnerability and sincerity. The music taught them a silent lesson about feeling deeply, about empathy, about noticing the emotions of those around them. It was a moment that would linger in their memories, a touchstone of beauty and connection that they would carry with them as they grew. A man who had been walking with a slow, measured pace paused completely. He closed his eyes and let the music envelop him. Memories of personal struggles, of times when he had felt invisible, and of moments of quiet triumph flooded his mind. He could feel the music affirming his experiences, telling him that the pain he had endured and the strength he had discovered were both meaningful and valuable. The violinist did not speak a single word, yet she had reached him in a way that no conversation could. The melody had become a mirror for his soul, reflecting both vulnerability and resilience. The park itself seemed to respond to the growing intensity of the performance. Birds perched in the trees, chirping softly in rhythm with the melody, as if acknowledging the beauty around them. The wind moved the branches gently, and the sunlight bathed the scene in warmth. It was as though the entire world had paused, allowing the music to fill the space completely. People who had come for ordinary reasons, exercise, walks, casual conversations, were now caught in a rare moment of shared humanity. The music had woven them into a single experience, transcending age, background, and circumstance. The violinist's emotions rose and fell with the melody. She reflected on moments of isolation, of times when she had questioned her path, and of moments of unexpected kindness that had reminded her of the goodness in the world. Each memory shaped the music, giving it depth and texture. She allowed herself to feel fully, knowing that the audience could sense her authenticity. This was not about impressing anyone. It was about communicating a truth that had been part of her for as long as she could remember. The music became a conduit for empathy, a bridge connecting the invisible stories of her life to those listening, the listeners. Even those who had been skeptical at first were drawn in completely. A young man who had been restless now sat quietly on a bench, absorbed in the emotions unfolding around him. A mother held her baby, feeling both the fragility and strength of life in the melody. Strangers shared glances, silently acknowledging the powerful experience they were part of. Recognizing that something rare and profound had entered their lives unexpectedly, the music had created a shared space of understanding, a place where human hearts were quietly united. The melody grew richer, flowing through both sorrow and hope, sadness and joy, with each note building upon the last. It was like watching a story unfold without a single word, a narrative of human experience told entirely through sound. The audience felt each chapter as it passed the struggles, the doubts, the quiet perseverance, and the moments of triumph. Each person could relate in their own way, finding fragments of their own lives reflected in the music. It was a personal connection, yet universal at the same time. A few people were moved to tears, though they tried to hide them. Others held their hands to their chests, feeling the music resonate deeply. Even children seemed to sense the emotional depth, their eyes reflecting curiosity and understanding beyond their years. There was a softness in the air, a kind of reverent silence, as if everyone present knew that this was not just a performance, it was an offering, a gift of shared emotion and human connection. The violinist moved seamlessly between gentle passages and more dynamic moments, allowing the music to ebb and flow naturally. She let herself feel the full spectrum of emotions, guiding her fingers with the intuition that comes from years of experience and introspection. The audience, in turn, responded instinctively. Some leaned forward, unable to tear their eyes away, while others closed their eyes, surrendering to the waves of feeling that washed over them. It was a rare alignment, a moment when art, emotion, and presence converged perfectly. The older man with the cane closed his eyes and allowed himself to remember not only the hardships he had faced, but also the small, unnoticed victories that had shaped his life. He felt gratitude and relief, recognizing that even difficult moments had their place and value. The young couple holding hands felt a deepening of their connection, understanding the power of vulnerability and shared emotion. The children absorbed lessons in empathy and attention, sensing the beauty of pure expression even without fully comprehending it. Every listener, in their own way, was touched by the honesty and intensity of the performance. The violinist's own emotions swelled as she played. She remembered moments when she had been overlooked, when her efforts had gone unnoticed, when she had doubted her own worth. She also remembered moments of quiet joy, acts of kindness, and times when she had felt a profound sense of purpose. The music became a reflection of all these experiences, a living record of her journey. It was authentic and unfiltered, and that authenticity resonated deeply with everyone around her. People could feel it because it was real, because it was human, because it was honest. The sun began to lower, casting long shadows across the park, yet the music did not falter. It seemed to rise above time itself, creating a timeless space where emotion could flow freely. The audience remained captivated, reluctant to leave, sensing that they were part of something rare and precious. The music was more than sound. It was a bridge connecting past and present, performer and audience, life and memory. Each note carried a weight of emotion that touched everyone who listened, leaving an imprint that could not be erased as the performance reached its most powerful section. The music swelled and soared, carrying both the violinist's emotions and those of the audience along with it. Tears flowed freely for some, smiles appeared for others, and a quiet sense of wonder settled over everyone. There was no need for words. The melody spoke for itself, conveying truths that could not be put into sentences. It was a moment of unity, of recognition, of shared humanity that transcended ordinary experience. Everyone present felt it, and they would remember it long after the final note faded. Finally, the music began to settle, moving toward a gentle conclusion. The last notes lingered in the air, soft and deliberate, allowing listeners to absorb the depth of what they had experienced. The park returned to quiet, but a sense of profound change remained. The audience felt lighter, more connected, and more aware of the beauty and complexity of human emotion. They had been touched by something that went beyond entertainment. It had been a shared experience of empathy, vulnerability, and understanding. The woman carefully lowered her bow, her breathing steady but filled with a quiet satisfaction. She did not need applause to know that she had made a difference, that the music had reached hearts and sparked something real and meaningful. As she packed her violin away, she looked around at the people who had been present. There were soft smiles, teary eyes, and expressions of gratitude, all silent acknowledgement of the invisible threads of connection the music had woven. She smiled quietly, feeling a warmth that came not from recognition, but from knowing she had shared herself. Honestly and fully. People began to move slowly, reluctant to break the spell, but inevitably returning to their own lives. The park returned to its ordinary rhythm, but the impact of the music lingered in hearts. Some would think about it later. Some would recall the feeling without remembering the notes exactly. Some would carry it with them as a quiet memory of beauty and connection. The violinist remained on the bench a little longer, taking in the scene, savoring the lingering sense of shared humanity she had helped create. And so, in that quiet park, an ordinary afternoon had transformed into something extraordinary. Through the violin, a simple request to play for fun had blossomed into a moment of emotional resonance, connection, and understanding. The audience had experienced a story without words, felt a journey without seeing the path, and recognized truths about themselves without needing